At 90, I realized my children had their own lives. Look at this man. He is 90 years old. He raised children, worked for decades, showed up for every important moment in their lives. And tonight, on his birthday, he is eating alone. Not because his children are cruel, not because they don't love him, but because nobody warned him about what happens after the children grow up. Nobody talked about it. And right now, millions of families are living this exact silence. His children have their own lives, and he is only now understanding what that actually means. There is a belief that lives inside almost every parent who has ever loved deeply. Never spoken, never written down, but completely real. It goes like this. I will give everything. I will sacrifice my sleep, my comfort, my ambitions for you. And when I am old and the house gets quiet, you will be there. This is not manipulation. This is love, expressed in the only language many parents know. And for generations, it worked, because the world was structured around it. Children lived nearby. Families gathered weekly. Grandparents were part of the household, not a once-a-year visit. That world is gone, and the parents who built their entire emotional life around that world are now sitting at dinner tables in cities where their children live 45 minutes away, which in modern life might as well be 45 years. The contract wasn't broken. It was made obsolete by a world that moved too fast for anyone to renegotiate. Nobody decides to drift away from their parents. It happens the way water carves through rock, so slowly that nobody notices until the canyon is already there. A visit gets rescheduled. A phone call gets cut short because dinner is on the stove. A holiday skipped because the kids had exams and it just wasn't a good time. Then the rescheduled visit becomes the pattern. The calls happen reliably on Sundays, but they are 10 minutes now, not 2 hours. There is less to say, or too much to say and no time to say it. And so both sides talk around the silence and call it a conversation. The parent notices. Of course they do. A person who spent decades reading the emotional weather of their home does not miss the fact that something has changed. But here is what almost never gets discussed. Most elderly parents don't say a word. They don't complain. They don't confront. They don't pick up the phone and say, "I feel forgotten," because they don't want to be a burden, because they remember what it was like to be young and overwhelmed, because saying it out loud makes it real. So they adjust. They learn to count the weeks between visits without letting their face show the number. They learn to make a 10-minute call stretch by asking about the grandchildren, the job, the house. And somewhere around 85 or 88 or 90, the adjustment is complete. My children have their own lives now, not said with anger, not with self-pity, said with the quiet, crushing acceptance of a fact of nature. This is not one family's story. It is a documented global crisis, and the numbers are hard to look at. More than 1/3 of adults over 45 report chronic loneliness. Among those over 80, the figure is significantly higher. Loneliness is not just an emotional experience. It is a physiological one. Chronic loneliness triggers the body's threat detection system, the same biological state as physical danger. Accelerated cognitive decline. In older adults, the health consequences of social isolation are comparable to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. We run public health campaigns about cigarettes. We run almost none about the quiet epidemic of elderly parents spending their final years with silence as their primary company. And there is one more finding, the one that is almost never discussed. Researchers have identified a psychological state called emotional ambiguity in filial relationships. It describes parents who feel abandoned by their adult children, measurably, physiologically abandoned, but who cannot bring themselves to name it, because naming it would mean seeing their children as having failed them. The love is too strong to allow the accusation, so the feeling lives in the body without a name. And without a name, it cannot be spoken, treated, or healed. It just sits there, quietly, at a table set for 8. We have to stop here, because this story, told carelessly, becomes a story of blame. Your children are not villains. In most cases, they are simply exhausted. Adult children today are what sociologists call the squeeze generation, pressed between aging parents and dependent children, while working in an economy that offers less stability and less time than any generation before them. This is not a generation of neglectful children. It is a generation of overwhelmed human beings doing their best inside a system not designed to support them. The guilt is real. Adult children who drift away from aging parents carry a quiet, persistent shame. The children who feel most guilty often visit least, because every visit has become a performance of atonement, and nobody wants to perform that. So the calendar stays empty. The gap is not made of malice. At 90, if you are truly honest, you will understand something that your love spent a lifetime obscuring. Your children were always separate people. The baby you held, that creature who looked at you as though you were the only fixed point in the universe, was always moving toward their own life. Every milestone was, in the most literal sense, a step away from you. You celebrated every single step, because you knew this was the point. You raised them to leave. You succeeded. And now you are living inside your own success. Research by Stanford psychologist Laura Carstensen shows that elderly adults with the highest sense of peace are those who have made what she calls a meaning-based peace with life as it actually is, not as they expected it to be. This peace is not resignation. It is not giving up. It is the same freedom you spent your whole life trying to give your children. You just have to be willing, finally, to take it for yourself. Look at him again. He is 90. He is eating alone. But look at how straight he sits. The small, private smile when he takes the first bite of the cake, performed for no one, because there is no one to perform for. His children have their own lives, and he, after 90 years, finally has his. Here is the question I want to leave with you, not for him, for you. When your children finally live their own lives, fully, freely, without apology, will you be ready